Hello, and welcome back to the Thecrimereel. For today's story on the Thecrimereel, we shall be visiting Skidmore, Missouri. Located in the Midwest of America, Skidmore has a steadily declining population, currently estimated to be around 250 people. This is down from approximately 400 in the 1980s. The town is situated on a hill above the Nodaway River, surrounded by farmland, and despite its small population has over the years witnessed some severely shocking crimes. Today we shall be looking further into the life and crimes of Ken McElroy. Ken Rex McElroy was born on the 1st of June 1934. He was the 15th of 16 children born to Tony and Mabel McElroy. For this extremely large family, money was short and life was very tough. His parents were tenant farmers, paying their land rent with crops and as such highly dependent upon each year's yield. As a young boy, McElroy sustained a serious head injury at his parents' farm. He fell from a hay wagon and needed a steel plate surgically inserted into his head. Many have questioned whether this significant injury led to the extreme personality traits which he displayed throughout his life. He dropped out of school at an early age, unable to read or write, and soon embarked upon a criminal career. By the age of 13, he was already well known to the local police. McElroy started out completing relatively petty crimes, initially stealing livestock which he then sold at auction or to those who knew better than to ask where the animals had come from. He was also allegedly involved in many local thefts, ranging from antiques to alcohol and grains to gasoline. As his confidence grew, he became increasingly arrogant, believing that the law did not apply to him, and in turn his crimes took on a much more sinister nature. He was a violent man with a quick temper who was a notorious womanizer and drinker. During the 1960s and 1970s, McElroy reigned over the small town of Skidmore by instilling a culture of absolute fear among its inhabitants. Despite charges being brought against him on at least 20 separate occasions, he successfully avoided conviction every time. He would intimidate any witness who was due to testify against him, often by parking outside their homes and silently watching them, and it has been rumoured that those preparing to testify could even open their mailboxes to find rattlesnakes inside. With the money he made from his substantial string of crimes, McElroy was able to instruct Richard Gene McFadden as his defence attorney. McFadden was a hugely successful lawyer who made no secret of the fact that he would use every trick in the book to protect his clients. McElroy married 3 times and fathered more than 10 children with various different mothers. Around 1970, McElroy met a new partner by the name of Trina McLeod, who was very much younger than him. She suffered extensive abuse at his hands and within a few years was pregnant with his child. After the birth of their baby boy, she tried to escape McElroy and fled to her parents' house, taking her newborn baby with her. McElroy was not prepared to let them go. He followed Trina to the parents' house and dragged her and the baby home. Before he left, he shot the family dog and burned her parents' house down to teach them all a lesson. At an appointment with her local doctor, Trina revealed details of the abuse and what had happened at her parents' home. McElroy was now facing multiple charges. In order to avoid these charges, he found a loophole in the law which meant that if they got married, Trina would be unable to testify against him. However, due to her age, McElroy needed Trina's parents' permission in order to marry her, something which he obtained through more intimidation and the threat of setting alight their new home. McElroy and Trina quickly married, and once again the charges against him were dropped. McElroy continued living his life the way he chose with no regard for the law. The town residents lived in fear of him. He was a big man, almost 6 foot tall and weighing 270 pounds or 123 kilograms. He would carry a gun wherever he went and would intimidate and threaten anyone who dared to cross his path. On July 27, 1976, a farmer by the name of Romain Henry found McElroy shooting weapons on his property. Henry challenged McElroy, who responded by shooting him twice in the stomach. Luckily, Henry survived, and McElroy was charged with assault with intent to kill. Whilst waiting for the case to go to trial, McElroy launched a campaign of harassment against Henry, and it is rumoured that he sat parked outside of his home over 100 times. When the trial eventually started, several people provided McElroy with an alibi, and he was once again acquitted. As time went by, Trina started to defend McElroy more and more. Any allegations she made against him, like many of his other victims, were withdrawn. She started to blame the fire at her family's home on faulty wiring, and also started to accompany McElroy on many of his trips to harass those with complaints against him. No one except Trina and McElroy know what went on to lead to this change of story. In July 1980, McElroy, Trina, and one of McElroy's young daughters visited the Skidmore grocery store. This store was owned by 70-year-old Bo Bowenkamp and his wife Lois. During the visit, McElroy's daughter took a candy bar, which she was asked to return as she hadn't paid for it. McElroy and Trina saw red, turning on Bo and Lois with an expletive-ridden tirade of abuse. Lois Bowenkamp tried to reason with them that it was simply a misunderstanding to try to make peace with McElroy. However, Ken refused to let this go and unleashed a campaign of intimidation against the elderly couple. He started sitting outside their home in his pickup truck every night, often firing his gun into the air. The Bowenkamps were terrified and resorted to sleeping in shifts at neighbours' homes. Then, one evening in late July 1980, Bo Bowenkamp was outside near the loading area at the rear of his grocery store. Ken McElroy approached him and shot him in the neck before quickly leaving in his truck. Richard Stratton, a highway patrolman, found out about this incident and assumed that McElroy would try to exit the county through the neighbouring town of Fillmore. Stratton tracked McElroy down and arrested him. Bo Bowenkamp was rushed to hospital and fortunately survived the attack. McElroy immediately instructed his lawyer, Richard McFadden, who started working on the defence that McElroy had acted in self-defence due to Bo Bowenkamp attempting to attack him with a knife. At the same time, McElroy continued to harass the Bowenkamp family, but despite their absolute fear, they held strong. The people of the town developed a way of communicating in code by sending children to the grocery store to buy innocuous items to advise the Bowenkamps that McElroy was on his way. Their strength seemed to pay off, and in the summer of 1981, McElroy finally received his first conviction, albeit for the lesser charge of second-degree assault. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, any relief that was felt in the town was soon reduced to frustration as McElroy was freed on a $40,000 bond pending the appeal of his conviction. The day after he was freed on bond, McElroy walked into the D&G Tavern and Pool Hall in Skidmore with a rifle with a bayonet, a clear violation of his bond, and he started bragging as to how he was going to finish off the Bowenkamps. Once again, the town was terrified. Witnesses who saw him with the gun gave the information to the county prosecutor to try to get the bond revoked. The town rallied around the witnesses and escorted them to the hearing to ensure that they were protected and to show the solidarity of a town who had been pushed to its limits. McFadden managed to get the hearing postponed. The people of the town were outraged and called a meeting at Skidmore's American Legion Hall on 10th of July 1981. This was attended by many of the town's small population. They used the meeting to discuss with Sheriff Danny Estes what could be done about Ken McElroy. They had already petitioned the governor, attorney general and state legislators without success. Exactly what was discussed at that meeting is not really known. Was it a plan to keep the witnesses safe, or a discussion on how to solve the problem of Ken McElroy once and for all? As the meeting was coming to a close, word was starting to spread that Ken and Trina were drinking in the town tavern. The townspeople left the Legion Hall and headed to the D&G tavern. When they arrived, Trina and McElroy, still carrying his rifle and a six-pack of beer, were getting into his Chevy Silverado, ready to leave. Surrounded by a crowd of around 50 people, shots were fired into the car and McElroy was hit twice. No one called an ambulance and no one saw a thing. McElroy died in the front seat of his pickup truck, his wife Trina sitting unharmed yet distraught next to him. Police eventually arrived and found shell casings from two different guns, a .22 caliber Magnum and an 8mm Mauser. The guns were never recovered. McElroy had been shot by two different people, one shooting from in front of the truck and one from behind. Trina claimed to know the identity of one of the two shooters, but with no definitive evidence, no one was ever charged, and it has been concluded that McElroy was killed by persons unknown. Many of the people involved in this case have now died themselves. Sheriff Estes, Highway Patrolman Stratton, the man Trina named as McElroy's killer, and Trina herself. So it is highly unlikely that we will ever fully know the truth of what happened on that day in the summer of 1981. Did the town get away with murder? Or was justice served by the people of a town that had been continually failed by the law? That concludes the story of Ken McElroy. Justice or murder? I hope you found that story interesting. Thank you once again for your continued support to my channel. I really do appreciate all the comments that you make. Thank you once again for listening to The Crime Reel. Goodbye. Psst. I'm just editing this together now. The news is Briefcase has now got 100,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Briefcase. Well done. Go follow The Briefcase. Goodbye.